It was noon on March 18th, 1941, when a loud screech and a scream shook bystanders in New York's Times Square. A man had just been struck by a speeding car. The crowd froze, horrified. Before anyone could react, a second car barreled through, crushing him again, then vanishing into the daytime traffic. First responders feared this was no random accident. Something darker was at play. The man clung to life for less than 24 hours. His identity unraveled a sinister mystery. His Spanish passport bore the name Don Julio Lopez Lido. Documents in his room told a far more dangerous story. Blueprints detailing the US Army base at Pearl Harbor and the nearby Hickam Field. It didn't take long for the FBI to expose the truth. Don Julio was actually Ulrich von der Osten, a high-ranking officer in Germany's shadowy intelligence network, the Abwehr. He wasn't just collecting secrets about Pearl Harbor, he was the link in a chain that connected Nazi Germany to their Japanese allies. Someone had silenced von der Osten. Before the FBI could piece it together, a flamboyant, womanizing double agent emerged from the shadows to replace von der Osten. He carried a warning foretelling an attack that would change history and inspire the creation of the world's most famous spy. James Bond, Agent 007. Duko Popov was a charismatic Yugoslav born in 1912. With a devil-may-care attitude and a penchant for extravagance, Popov's journey into the world of spies began at the onset of World War II, when he was recruited by the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service led by the cunning Admiral Wilhelm Canaris. His recruiter was a close German friend, Johann Jebsen. Popov's first mission seemed simple enough: infiltrating France and identifying political leaders who could further the Nazi agenda. Popov delivered what was asked, but beneath his suave exterior, cracks began to form. Witnessing the Nazi regime's brutal conquest of Europe and its vicious suppression of dissent at first hand began to take a toll on him. Enraged by what Hitler was doing, Popov made a decision that would send him on a spectacular path of covert operations, lavish parties, and high-stakes interrogations. He turned against the Abwehr and offered his services to the British as a double agent. After intense interrogation by MI5, Popov's loyalty was confirmed. The British quickly realized they had a unique asset. Codenamed Tricycle, a cheeky nod to his notorious habit of entertaining 2 women at a time, Popov was thrust into the high-stakes world of double agents. His training introduced him to the lavish style he would soon get accustomed to. He was housed at London's opulent Savoy Hotel and honed his craft under the guidance of Major T.A. Robertson, one of his British handlers. His escapades with Robertson often blurred the lines between work and pleasure. In late 1940, the pair indulged in a night of London's finest excess. Robertson later recounted the evening, "I think Tricycle enjoyed himself thoroughly once he took part in the Christmas champagne. We danced, we drank, and early in the morning we returned to the Savoy, both viewing things through rose-tinted spectacles. But beneath the glittering surface of champagne and nightclubs, Popov was laying the groundwork for a dangerous mission." The British devised a plan: pass Duko Popov off as a loyal Nazi agent, all while controlling his every move. Under the watchful eye of the double-cross system, a secret British intelligence program that flipped-captured German spies, Popov became a critical piece in a treacherous game of manipulation and misinformation. Oblivious to the ruse, the Germans handed Popov a file stamped "Most Secret." Inside were detailed orders. Assess the state of the British arms industry, investigate production facilities in Weybridge, Wolverhampton, and Dartford, and report on the operational strength of RAF squadrons flying Supermarine Spitfires and Hawker Hurricanes. What Berlin received was a carefully crafted campaign that fit perfectly into Britain's larger strategy of misdirection, but that seemed credible enough upon superficial review. Meanwhile, the Abwehr was reeling from the mysterious loss of Ulrich von der Osten in New York. Desperate to fill the void, they turned to their trusted agent, Popov. In August 1941, Popov boarded a ship bound for the United States with $58,000 in Abwehr funds to establish a Nazi espionage network in New York. The Germans believed they had sent their most valuable spy to America. Living life on the edge was second nature to Duško Popov, and his journey to the United States was no exception. Stopping in Portugal, he made a detour to the glamorous casinos of Estoril, where he gambled with abandon using Nazi-provided funds. At the roulette table, Popov's charm and confidence drew stares, particularly from another mysterious figure. Commander Ian Fleming of British Naval Intelligence studied Popov closely. Fleming had been dispatched by MI6 to monitor the double agent to make sure he didn't turn against them. Fleming found no evidence of such a thing, but was captivated by Popov's audacity and charm. Years later, Fleming would immortalize the scene in his first James Bond novel, Casino Royale, drawing heavily on Popov to create his iconic Agent 007. On August 12, 1941, Popov landed in New York aboard the Pan Am Clipper, stepping off at LaGuardia Airport with a cool confidence. He headed straight for the Waldorf Astoria, the Grand Hotel overlooking Park Avenue, settling into the luxury befitting his double life. Like Bond, Popov carried more than charm. He was equipped with state-of-the-art spy gear. Concealed within a telegram was a microdot, a revolutionary espionage tool that compressed pages of information into the size of a pinhead. The microdot contained a list of questions from the Abwehr, questions they wanted answered for their Japanese allies. Popov knew the implications were explosive, but his mission hinged on gaining the trust of the Americans. Eager to begin, Popov reached out to the FBI immediately upon arrival. But his enthusiasm was met with frustrating silence. For 5 agonizing days, the dashing spy waited, accustomed to immediate attention. The delay was almost unbearable. Finally, FBI agent James Foxworth, New York bureau chief, met with Popov. The contents of the microdot stunned the agent. The questions sought detailed information about the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The Germans, and, by extension, the Japanese, wanted to know the exact locations of air bases like Hickam, Wheeler, and Kaneohe, the depth of Pearl Harbor's waters, the placement of anti-torpedo nets, and even sketches of the harbor itself. If true, this was huge. The microdot confirmed that Japan had Pearl Harbor in its sights and detailed what they were preparing for. If acted upon, it could be the counterintelligence breakthrough of the century. But time was running out, and double agents were not easily trusted. If the FBI had connected the dots, they might have realized the intelligence carried by Duško Popov echoed material found months earlier in the room of slain German agent Ulrich von der Osten. However, instead of recognizing the pattern, Popov's warnings fell victim to internal mistrust and bureaucratic rivalry. FBI agent James Foxworth handed Popov's questionnaire to J. Edgar Hoover, who viewed Popov with suspicion. To Hoover, the Yugoslav double agent's lavish lifestyle and flagrant womanizing, including affairs with French actress Simone Simon and even her mother, were red flags. Hoover saw Popov as a potential liability. He wanted him deactivated as soon as possible. Against Hoover's wishes, British MI6 loaned him to the Americans so he could report directly to them. Popov's intelligence, including details on Pearl Harbor, was crucial, yet Hoover, unwilling to trust either Popov or the British, withheld the Pearl Harbor-related queries from both Bill Donovan, head of the newly formed Coordinator of Information, and President Roosevelt. Instead, Hoover doctored the questionnaire before sending it to the White House, ensuring vital intelligence stayed buried. Donovan, a close confidant of Roosevelt, quickly became Hoover's arch-nemesis. Hoover saw the COI, a new agency created to handle America's overseas intelligence, as a challenge to his power and influence. The British decided to cut Hoover out of the loop, handing over sensitive intelligence straight to Donovan instead. By late November 1941, under increasingly hostile FBI surveillance, Popov received new orders from the Abwehr to travel to Rio de Janeiro. He was instructed to establish a link between Rio and Lisbon. His warning about the impending attack on Pearl Harbor had fallen on deaf ears. The attack on December 7, 1941, was painful for Popov, frustrated for not being taken seriously by the Americans, even when his credibility had been vouched for by British intelligence. Popov's relationship with the FBI soured further as the Bureau restricted his operations and denied him essential resources. Forced to walk a tightrope between maintaining his cover with the Germans and avoiding entanglement in American intelligence politics, Popov ultimately returned to Britain. Back in Europe, the spy played a critical role in Operation Bodyguard, the Allied deception campaign leading to the D-Day invasion. Popov's legacy is as intriguing as the man himself. He was a man of excess, a womanizer who loved the finer things in life and had a knack for pulling off stunts so bold they inspired Ian Fleming's James Bond. But looking beyond the facade, he was an honorable man who dedicated his life to fighting Nazism. Even now, the details of his missions and the web of relationships he spun are mostly classified, keeping an air of intrigue around one of history's most elusive and captivating spies. Popov, Dushko Popov,